What's up, everybody? Glad you could join us for another Theological Sidebars. So here we are. We are going to be talking a little bit about the passage from this Sunday. And here's what we're going to discover. Here's what we're going to find as we do this passage. It's from Matthew chapter 9. So if you will, you want to go there, Matthew chapter 9. And we're going to be looking at really the verses of 32, 33, 34. So here's what it says. Just as they were going out, a demon-possessed man who was unable to speak was brought to him. When the demon had been driven out, the man who had been mute spoke, and the crowds were amazed, saying, "Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel." But the Pharisee said, "He drives out demons by the ruler of demons." Now, okay, so here's the deal. You read something like this, and one of the things that I think immediately comes to mind is the fact that here is Jesus performing miracles in the midst of these people, and yet people reject him, right? I don't know. So one thing we've been talking about lately here is, and really pushing, is we've been really trying to push and talk about that every Christian is a disciple who necessarily is a disciple maker, okay? So if you are a Christian, you are to be a disciple maker, which means you should try to be in the process of discipling someone or finding people that you can begin to share with to disciple, right? And so this is a set of verses that I think should give us some pause just to recognize that, that as you share, you may not always get the response that you think you're going to get. I want to caution that, that it's that even Jesus himself, people just pushed back, and they had the audacity to claim that he was demonic in what he was doing. I think it's just evidence that some people will never believe. And I think that should take, look, it's a sad story, but I think in some respects, for you and I, as we talk about the job of being the disciple maker, right, that should take the pressure off a little bit to understand that there are people who they didn't even believe Jesus, even in their midst doing miracles, and they're like, "Nah, I'm not going to do it. I don't care. In fact, I'm going to go the complete opposite about you," and recognize that that's going to happen. So it's sad that it happens, but it's also something to recognize that, like, once again, it just proves that it's not our job, right? That we are not the people who are going to get the job done. And that's something that you and I, as we think through, like, I don't know about you, if you remember, growing up, there's probably how many stories you get the traveling evangelist that comes to the church and talks about how he was on the airplane and starts talking and preaching. Everybody on the airplane gets saved. And you kind of look at your own life and you're like, how come that doesn't happen with me? Well, maybe there's a couple things. Maybe the first is you just don't ever share anything. You're kind of one of those, I come home, go to work, garage, up, down, in, out, that's it. Wave, goodbye. I invited someone to church last year. I don't know. I think I'm doing a pretty good job, that kind of a thing, So that's maybe one of the first reasons of why it doesn't happen. But I think the second reason is I don't think that's actually reality. I think that reality is, as you share, you're going to find that there will always be a different response every time. And your hope, my desire, is to see that people would accept and believe. But the truth is, you're going to find a lot of people are just, no matter what you show them, they'll never get it. And you might think, if I just gave them something, right? If I just tried harder next time, if I just explained it better, and I think that should take that guilt off. Like, if you've been careful to share the gospel, actually explain it, like, that is sufficient. Look at what Paul tells us about the gospel, and he tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and he knows what he says in 18, "For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but it is the power of God to us who are being saved." And I do think that that's something that to be understood, right, is that that if you share the gospel, there will be some who will say that's a bunch of foolishness. But to the ones who are being saved, that God will save them, it is the power of God, right? That gospel is what will wake them up to the power of the Holy Spirit indwelling, opening their eyes, I think that's something you and I need to kind of keep in mind, right? Is that it will be foolishness to some, but it's power to those who are being saved. And Paul goes into that and talks about that. Really, that's what he uses. He uses these things, something as simple as the gospel, to be what will change everything. And the world calls it foolishness, but all of their foolishness is, all of their wisdom is truly foolishness. But it's this message, this gospel message that he says is what is true wisdom, right? And so I think that, you look at something like 1 Corinthians 1:22, for the Jews ask for signs, the Greeks ask for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles. Yet those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God, because God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom. God's weakness is stronger than human strength. And so look, I just think that I hope that this is maybe a wake-up call to recognize that every time you do this, it's not going to happen. But that being said, y'all, is there are times where we might write people off already, saying, yeah, they're not going to get it. They're not going to. You don't remember it is God's power. The gospel is the power of God, right? You have no place to determine whether they'll ever get it or not, right? So share it. Be faithful to do it. I remember, you shared somebody a while ago, and you're like, even asked, what's going to keep you from making that decision? Oh, nothing. I don't know where that person is anymore. I don't even know what they're doing. And they never came, never joined, right? They heard it. And you're kind of like, okay, well, I got to trust that that's enough. I got to trust that the gospel is doing its thing. And if God's going to save them, maybe that was part of the plant. Maybe that's part of the seed. Maybe that's part of what was planted. And I just am just a little piece of the conveyor belt of life, as they go through it. So I don't know. But on the other side, I want you to recognize, like, it is God's power. It's not you to do it. You're not this special person that can get it done every time. You're going to find that it will be rejected, and that's okay. It's not you, unless there is something about you that you need to get right, right? Maybe you have a terrible witness in how you live, and there's that part of it, right? But I think, we need to look at this. Look what happened to Jesus in this story and recognize the main point that Matthew's making is that people are beginning to already push back and turn. But for you and I, we need to recognize that Jesus himself is doing works among these people, and they still reject. And there's some that are excited, and maybe some of those who were become followers of his later on. And they're not just crowd, but they move in. The thing for you and I to think is, as we do our job, the hope, the desire is to see that there will be some who will, and that will accept. So let's pray for that. Not be discouraged when it does happen, that they do reject, but pray and recognize that if I'm sharing the power of God, I need to let it go, share it, and let God do his work. Whether they accept or not, none of that is on me, because I can't get that. I can't bring you across. If there's nothing that I can do to bring you across the finish line. Trust the gospel to do its job. Don't worry about what the results may look like on the surface. God's doing his thing. And as we study through Matthew, you'll see more of that come through. All right, I hope this has been helpful. Look, hang in there. We'll talk to you guys later. And comment, tell me what you need. If there's anything we want to talk more about in this too, if you have any feedback. All right, take care. Bye-bye.